How's it going, everyone? Sorry for my SpongeBob. Today is August 13th, 2021, and today we're going to focus on Tropical Storm Fred and what will likely become Tropical Storm Grace at this point, and see what type of impacts you'll experience in the Caribbean as well as the United States for this week. Well, before I begin, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more weather content. Make sure to like if you like this video, and make sure to turn on post notifications if you want to see even more weather content. So let's begin by taking a look at the current 5-day tropical weather outlook provided by the National Hurricane Center, and you see we do have Tropical Storm Fred pretty much hugging the Cuba coast at this point, which has now weakened over the past several days as a result of land interaction, as well as a stronger than expected wind shear throughout this region. As you see, the maximum sustained winds are at 35 miles per hour, minimum central pressure down to 1,013 millibars, and it is moving west-northwest at 12 miles per hour, which is around an average speed for a tropical cyclone. Now, taking a look at potential tropical cyclone 7, you see that we have maximum sustained winds up to 35 miles per hour, central millibar pressure down to 1,010 millibars, and it's moving west at 21 miles per hour, which is a bit on the faster side when it comes to tropical cyclones, which is part of the reason why this hasn't really developed into a tropical storm or a tropical depression just yet, is because it is moving too fast to the point where the lower level winds and the upper level winds are pretty much displaced from each other, and that creates a disconnect of where that energy goes. So as a result, we aren't seeing a tropical depression out of this just yet. So first we're going to take a look at potential tropical cyclone 7. I'm taking a look at the IR loop. At this point, we do see that there's a lot of convection embedded around the center of circulation, which I'd assume is right around here at this point. Of course, this isn't a tropical depression just yet, and I primarily blame that to the wind, because of the wind shear over this region. This storm is moving quite fast, so it's going to be really hard for the upper level winds and lower level winds to not be displaced away from each other, thanks to the disconnect in wind speed and even wind direction. However, that wind shear is expected to wind down as the storm heads further and further westward, which will definitely increase the chances and make it almost guaranteed at this point we're going to see some sort of tropical depression or tropical storm Grace out of this. But outside of how fast the storm is moving, we do see a nice outflow. We do see those outflow clouds in the upper levels of the atmosphere, and we do see a lot of convection embedded within the core of the storm. So it's looking pretty healthy for something that's not even a tropical depression. So I assume that this has a high chance of developing. Now, your main concerns probably will be where exactly this will go and how strong this will become. So to take a look at that, we're going to take a look at the GFS model. We're first going to take a look at the relative humidity within the mid levels of the atmosphere, between the layers where the air pressure is between 400 millibars and 700 millibars. You're going to see that this is currently potential tropical cyclone 7. It's currently ways away from the Caribbean at this time, but should reach a Caribbean, I'd say, sometime on Sunday, August 15th, as it's going to move further and further westward quite quickly, but then it should begin to slow down as it heads to the Caribbean. But you see, taking a look at the relative humidity, we do see a decent amount of dry air on the north and western side of this storm, which might inhibit development just a little bit. But moving forward with the forecast, you're going to see that the storm will be able to fight off against this dry air, which is very important. You see that the storm does develop despite the dry air that's surrounding it, as it might be one of those small storms where it pretty much isolates itself from the dry air around it. So as a result, it does have a good chance of strengthening. I wouldn't say it's going to strengthen at a rapid rate, because I still do believe that the dry air will inhibit its development quite a bit, but it at least should develop into a low-end tropical storm most likely. And as it heads further and further westward, it's going to enter a slightly more moist environment, but the next obstacle will be the land interaction. That was a big obstacle for Tropical Storm Fred to a point where it weakened into a tropical depression. And it seems like this might be the case again. There's still uncertainty regarding the forecast, and any small differences in terms of where exactly this could go could be key for this storm, because if it misses out on the islands, then we could see a much stronger storm than anticipated. However, if it goes straight over the islands, which is the current forecast, then we should see this weaken again as it heads closer and closer to the United States coast. But you see that the dry air eventually subsides once we head into the Sunday timeframe, and once this storm approaches the Caribbean region, you see that this storm, the GFS model now expects the storm to move a little bit northward, and the dry air will be there, but it won't be a ton of dry air. But we do see just enough dry air entering the western side of the storm, which could inhibit development. So the dry air remains to be seen. It seems like the GFS model is forecasting that the dry air should keep this storm strength at a minimum, and then head into the 5-day mark. You see that we see a lot of dry air on the western side, and that pretty much shears the western side of this storm and makes it too stable for this storm to develop much more than a low-end tropical storm. If we were to move even further beyond the 5-day mark, it becomes a little concerning, because the GFS model very close to the United States wants to develop a full-on hurricane, but I want to make sure that take it with a huge grain of salt, because this is an extremely long-term forecast when we're talking about forecast 7 days out. So a lot could change till then. We have to just wait and see if the GFS model and the European model keep persisting on this idea that it wants to develop some sort of tropical storm or hurricane. But as of right now, it seems like for the short-term future, this tropical storm is expected to mainly stay as a weekend tropical storm. Now, taking a look at the upper level winds that are going to be over this storm, it's going to be there's going to be times where it's going to deal with a light to moderate wind shear, which could inhibit development, but there are also going to be other times where the wind shear should be relatively light, so it could promote a slight amount of development. However, the current consensus is that this is going to mainly be like a mid-level to weak tropical storm as it heads further westward into the Caribbean. But you see that the wind shear is quite light. We do see stronger wind shear as a result of this upper level low located towards Bermuda, but it isn't really that big of a threat to this storm. And if we were to continue to move forward, the wind shear does increase as a result of this upper level high located in Florida, but that's expected to also subside as the storm heads further westward. And while it will deal certainly with some wind shear as it heads further westward, I think it could be able to handle it. But when you compound it by the fact that it's going to deal with land interaction and dry air, it does seem likely that over the near future this will rapidly develop. Now that could change if there's a little bit less dry air than initially anticipated, and if this does take a track further northward and avoids the islands, then we could maybe see something more than a mid-level tropical cyclone. But at this point, based off of all the factors the computer models are detecting, it seems like this will mainly be a mid-level tropical storm, at least for the near future. Beyond the 5-day mark, it becomes more uncertain, and maybe if it's under an area that's very favorable for tropical cyclone conditions, like lack of dry air, lack of wind shear, we could see it maybe develop into more than mid-level tropical cyclone, and who knows, maybe a hurricane. So the United States needs to at least be aware of that possibility, because it could enter an area where the wind shear is relatively light, the water temperatures are going to be warm, and so you certainly always want to at least pay attention to storms like this in the United States. So make sure to keep that in mind throughout the Caribbean. Even if this doesn't develop into even a tropical storm, rain should be forecasted throughout the Caribbean, so watch out for that, especially since you guys just experienced Tropical Storm Fred. So the likelihood of flash flooding and flooding overall does increase as a result of a recent rain event. Now, taking a look at the forecasted track over the next several days, you see that by Wednesday, 8 a.m., it should reach around the Bahamas at that point and should be right at Florida's doorstep. So this is something to keep in mind. Again, the track will be huge because if this moves just a bit further southward to avoid the islands, or just a bit further northward, that could mean big things for the storm. But the most likely scenario is that this does go over land, and it does limit it from developing from anything more than mid-level tropical cyclone, at least for the next 5 days. Beyond the 5 days, it becomes a little concerning that a GFS wants to develop a hurricane, but there's still a lot of uncertainty, so take it with a huge grain of salt, and I'll make sure to forecast you guys once we get more updates. Now, taking a look at our next tropical cyclone that's closer to home, that's expected to impact the United States, we have Tropical Depression Fred, which is currently located in Cuba at this point, and you see that we do see some convection on the on this portion of the storm, but you see that it's dealing with quite a bit of not only land interaction but wind shear at this time. It's really hard to identify where the center of circulation is. It's supposedly hugging the coast of Cuba, but you see that it's displaced by all the convection that's on the southern side of the storm, and we see a lot of the cloud tops drifting into the north as a result of the strong upper level low that's located in Florida at this point, and that's imposing strong wind shear, which is inhibiting development for the moment. Combined with the land interaction, it's really struggling to survive tropical depression Fred. So that's definitely good news that there's a little bit more wind shear than initially anticipated, and it's dealing with a lot of land interaction at this point. However, it is expected to re-strengthen just before it makes landfall somewhere along the Gulf Coast of the United States. Taking a look at the model intensity guidance, you see that majority of the ensemble members are forecasting this to re-strengthen into a tropical storm. Not a very strong tropical storm at this point, which is definitely good news. I'd say right around a mid-level tropical storm, but it's still at least something to be concerned about throughout Florida, especially since this storm is expected to bring a lot of rain throughout Florida and throughout a lot of the Gulf Coast. And you need to keep in mind, whether this is a tropical depression or a tropical storm, tropical storms are known to dump just heavy rain and cause billions of dollars of disasters just because of the rain alone. So you do not want to underestimate this storm just because it's a tropical depression or a tropical storm, as there's still a pretty high likelihood that it could dump heavy rain and cause flooding, and one of the leading causes of weather-related deaths in the United States are flooding. So make sure to not underestimate the power of flooding in the United States. Now, taking a look at the projected path provided from the National Hurricane Center, you see that the National Hurricane Center is expecting the storm to move northward into somewhere in the Florida Panhandle and potentially making landfall around the Florida Keys or along the extreme western coast of Florida. If this were to take the more eastward track, but the most likely scenario is that it makes landfall somewhere in the Keys and makes landfall somewhere in the Florida Panhandle. But remember, impact spread well beyond the eye, so throughout Florida entirely, the rain is expected to be very heavy, even if the eye is far away from you guys. So make sure to prepare for flooding, and even in states like Alabama and Georgia, you should expect impacts from this, mainly in the effect of heavy rain, which is definitely a pretty big concern for you guys. So make sure to keep in mind, if you see water, turn around, don't drown. Now, taking a look at the rainfall forecast, you see that a good portion of southern Florida is expecting 6 to 10 inches of rain, which is just extremely heavy rain, and that's extremely concerning because 6 to 10 inches of rain is a lot of rain. That's pretty much 1/5 of the rain you get in a year in Florida, all just in one day. So to put that in perspective, that's just a lot of rain to have within a 1 day period, where we do see just heavy rain as a result of what will likely become Tropical Storm Fred in the later future, as this is expected to re-strengthen into a tropical storm because this is going to be over open waters again, and the wind shear should be relatively light. Taking a look at what the GFS model is saying, you're going to see that GFS model does expect this to re-strengthen just before it makes landfall. We see it drop down to 1,007 millibars and make landfall somewhere in the Florida panhandle. So you guys need to pay close attention to that. And taking a look at the forecasted rainfall, you see that there's going to be heavy rain, especially on the eastern side, because the western side is going to be a little sheared just a little bit by the dry air, which should inhibit this from rapidly intensifying. As you see, the western side of the storm will be entrained by dry air, but you see the eastern side will be filled with moisture, as that should make it just a very heavy rain threat throughout the Florida and the southeast coast overall. So make sure to pay close attention to this throughout the United States. But yeah, guys, I guess that's it for this video. I think guys actually, let me show you one more thing. It's gonna be give me just one. Okay guys, so this is what I want to show you, just my projected path and strength for Tropical Cyclone 7. Keep in mind, this is just my speculation alone, and to seek guidance, consult the National Hurricane Center for the most reliable information. But based on my speculation, I do expect this to mainly stay around mid-level to weak tropical storm as it heads further westward. Like I said, it's going to deal with land interaction as well as a decent amount of dry air, which should inhibit this from rapidly intensifying, but this still should dump heavy rain throughout the Caribbean. So make sure to keep that in mind, and same goes for Tropical Storm Fred. So I want you guys to stay safe, and yeah, make sure to at least be aware of this throughout the United States. But yeah, guys, I thank you guys for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.